Joined with my very special guest this week, actress, writer, and director, Miss Honey Lauren. How are you, ma'am?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. How are you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, we were just talking before we started. Things are a little hectic right now with, everything that's going on with the virus and things just closing one by one. And it's like, what is there really to do now except for, stay inside, watch TV, and listen to podcasts, which hopefully you're doing.
That's the thing to do for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
There could be actually a better time.
Yeah, it's but I think it's something that will be okay at the end of it. That's what I've been trying to tell people, is that just keep a positive outlook. And I know there's a lot of stuff that's reported on Facebook and various news outlets, really across multiple platforms. But if you just stay safe and keep a level head, I think we'll all be okay.
I agree. I mean, I feel that's so important, is to not feed into the panic, not go crazy in the anxiety of it all, and try to follow what you're being told to do right now. We have to try this social distancing, and especially I live in Los Angeles, California, and we're on like a semi-lockdown, but I do think that doing this is something that we can proactively do to maybe make it much better for ourselves ultimately, because we don't want to be like Spain. It's so sad, or Italy.
Yeah.
And and so here we have this sort of like kickstart. Go, okay, let's try this like several weeks before we're supposed to be hit in the same way. I think we were 2 weeks behind. Like 3 weeks ago, I was like, oh God, we shouldn't be talking to each other. Like, it just felt really bad being out there and irresponsible. So anyway, but I do feel like this is going to do something. It has to help improve at least the curve of it, so that we don't all get it at the same time, not to overwhelm the system.
Yeah. No, and I would agree with that. And you mentioning LA, even the movie industry is feeling it too, with all these productions getting shut down. And like, how is that, with you being in Los Angeles, what is that aspect like out there?
It is shut down, for sure shut down. I have some things that were supposed to happen at the end of April in terms of work, and prior in the last couple of weeks, maybe about 3 weeks ago, I was going out on auditions, and it felt very ambivalent. And I was like, this doesn't feel like it's going to happen, because things were starting to creep in. And sure enough, things got canceled. Everything, commercials, television shows, films, everything's been canceled right now. There was some crazy casting call out today saying, hi, make a video of yourself taking during the quarantine, how you would have a party. I'm thinking, by yourself? What are they trying to ask us to do? But I mean, that's the kind of stuff they're casting now. Really crazy. So nothing is happening here in terms of that. We all have to just hold on and try and get through this. Yeah, so complete shutdown.
It's absolutely insane. Like, I keep hearing news stories about, this movie being canceled, or not canceled, but postponed. This other big budget movies being postponed, and then movies are coming out on digital early, which is
the other thing.
Which is insane, because you normally have to wait like 4 months or maybe even longer to watch a movie that you saw in the theater at your house. But kind of going off of that, I was reading your bio. You're actually a native of Los Angeles, which I feel like is almost the minority of filmmakers, actors, directors that I talk to. Is like everyone moves from, whether it's Chicago, New York, somewhere in Florida. Very rarely do I chat with somebody who grew up in LA. So you were around all this from an early age.
Absolutely. But it was a crazy thing. I had these super cool parents growing up, very groovy. And my father, at one point, he was a film editor, and he did very well for the time that he did it. He ended up getting out of business because ultimately he didn't enjoy the people or the lifestyle. But while I grew up in around the industry, my parents, they let me do all kinds of things, art class, dance, whatever, but they wouldn't get me an agent. I used to think, why can't we do this like a business? than my little kid in me. Like I had that kind of business head for it. And they were like, yeah, no, that's not happening. So they were supportive to a point. But then I ended up leaving home at 16 um, and moving to San Francisco. I graduated early and was accepted into a wonderful school in San Francisco. So I left LA for several years, which was a great thing because you want to leave where you grew up ultimately. But growing up here, there was just a lot of being around a lot of movie star kids, rock star kids. And it was interesting and challenging at the same time, especially if you're like a poor kid who grew up south of Pico, which is what I did.
So what was it specifically that made you want to be an actor? Was it?
I don't know how to answer that because it was just a desire, a drive that I always had growing up. I just was fascinated by the whole concept of it. I'm not sure that I was particularly, driven that way by anybody's influence, but it was just something kind of I always knew I wanted to do. And again, not having the support to be able to do it when I really wanted to at a super young age wasn't helpful because it sure does help to have parents who are like behind you, but it's an awful lot to ask your parents to do. Take you to auditions. I mean, it becomes a lifestyle, and we were pretty poor, so my parents had to work, and it wasn't like looking back on it, I couldn't have expected them to help me in the business aspect of it. But I don't know really what the drive was other than, it felt like a fascination for me and something I love to do.
Now, once you moved to San Francisco,
Yeah.
how did you take the next step to actually getting your career as being an actor?
Yeah, so I went to a school called ACT, which is American Conservatory Theater, and it was a probably one of the better conservatories in California for sure. And so once I went there and I joined a group called the Angels of Light, which was an award-winning theater group, but like they were on a large scale. We're not talking a little dinky theater. We do like theater for 500 people, and we work on a show all year. We make the costumes, write it, and they were musicals, and they were beautiful, absolutely stunning. Again, award-winning shows, and I also danced. So the dance and the acting, I was able to maneuver some work, like paying jobs. I had to come back to Los Angeles, however, to actually pursue it, which I did in my 20s. So, and having done that, at that point, my father was pretty groovy. He helped me to, I don't know, I don't know how this happened, but somehow I got an agent and I can't really remember how I got to him, but he drove me to the appointment that I remember. and, so that was, I guess, when I first started to do it. I guess you would call it more professionally. In San Francisco, we got paid, but it was a different world out there. There was like one agent and it was mostly for models. And out here, there was even a dance agent, slightly different than San Francisco. So we had a lot, you had to be here in order to pursue it. You really did.
Right.
So once I got an agent, from there it was just a question of getting out, which wasn't easy because I looked different than a lot of women in this town growing up during my time. I mean, I definitely didn't look like the all American girl at all. I looked different, and that was a little bit of a problem at that time. Now it's very cool to look different, but when I was coming up, it was confusing.
Well, because people are looking for that unique look or that very distinctive look. So now you can use that as to your advantage in a way.
Absolutely, it's absolutely helpful now. I mean, I had this big curly hair, and it's at the time, and my I still do, but my hair was blue black, just naturally dark, and my skin was super white. So they were like, "What are you?" And like, where do we put you? Now it's a whole different world. They welcome people to be individual, and they even have a new category called ethnically ambiguous, which I think is hilarious, but certainly didn't exist when I was around
Yeah.
coming up. So it was challenging. I would go out with a lot of African American women at my auditions. I didn't get to ever play like a white girl. That just never would happen. But so it was confusing for them. And there
Interesting.
wasn't like it was really wild. The reaction from people it was crazy. So, but it was fun. And I had this groovy agent at not initially, but eventually who was all about different people. He was just all about that. Like he never had anybody who just was a pretty girl. They had to be something a little exotic to even work with him. That was his signature. And that was wonderful. We had a great run together.
That's fantastic.
So yeah. I got lucky on that regard, finding him and him finding me. And we were good for each other. So and yeah.
Well, it sounds like the timing worked out too, because I tell people when they're pursuing some type of a certain career that, a lot of it relies on your skill and your drive, but there's also, it's like you never quite know when things are going to work out. And there's always about the little timing moments. And it sounds like that was one of them.
Oh, yeah. You're very smart because people, I call it luck. And when I talk to especially my peers and bring up the luck factor, people get very angry. It's like they don't want to accept that luck, which was what you would call timing, exists, or that it has anything to do with it. And you can work as long as you work hard, you're going to get it. No, I mean, there is a piece of luck that you've got to have in order to be able to break through. And you got to keep working really hard. Someone once said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I believe that. Yeah, luck's a huge factor.
It's just crazy to think that so much can go back to just one specific moment. And you think, well, if that didn't happen, you don't know what would have happened from there on out.
Oh, God, on every level. That's the truth, too. It's just with the people you meet. And that's the idea of always being prepared. You always have to be prepared because you just never know.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that I've definitely, looking back on some of the decisions I've made, I wonder, gosh, if only I said yes to that or no to that or whatever, something different. And because you just don't know. That's the truth. You really don't.
Yeah, no, that's very true. So I wanted to go back a bit to your time in San Francisco.
Oh, sure.
As being a part of a theater and dance group, do you feel like that helped prepare you for your eventual professional acting career?
I do. For me, even though acting on stage and acting from the camera, two very different things, there's something that was so spectacular about the Angels of Light, and I'm really dating myself. But the Angels of Light, which were the offshoots of a group that you wouldn't know probably, but they were called the Coquettes. These people, one of the great things about working with them is we were forced to contribute in the show. In other words, you write your part. The costumes were outrageous and beautiful. The dance, I mean, you had to go beyond your fears. And eventually, I believe that was a huge influence in my life because eventually I started writing and producing and directing. And I got to tell you, it all goes back to that time working with the Angels and just stretching myself. Like, I don't know how to do that. It's like you have to figure out how to do it. And it was wonderful. It was a great learning experience. And it helped me in my career.
And that's something I like to chat with people about who have done both theater and acting for film or for TV, and just hearing the differences, because I have so much respect for theater actors because you have to remember so much, and there's like there's no real safety net. It seems like because you're out on the stage and everything's live.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. Well, that is true. But I also have to say the idea of they're challenging in different ways. Obviously, the biggest thing is the proximity of the camera as opposed to the proximity of the audience just in terms of stylistically when you're acting. But I mean, there's exceptions to every rule because some people, like if you're doing a part on film and the person's a really big person, people are really big in life. And so might be bigger than you might expect, the part to be played. But don't think for a minute that in film acting, you really do need to have a good memory as well,
Hmm.
because we do long takes and sometimes we pick up at the weirdest spots. So you've got to be so spot on with what you're doing that in some ways it's a lot more challenging than even doing theater. Uh, Theater is very difficult, don't get me wrong, but it's like you might have to start a scene in the oddest place, in the oddest physical position you can imagine, just because for the camera. And it's really, and you got to play with your mind and make sure that you're in that scene up to that point, you know. So it's just difficult. It can be really challenging. But no, you don't get the redos, you know, in theater like you get to do on film, that's for sure.
Well, and that brings up something that, whenever I directed my first short a couple of years ago, and
Mm,
learning the aspect of of everything was just a huge eye-opening experience for me. You mentioning, having to stop in certain places, like hitting your mark and
yeah.
going to mark 1 and mark 2. Like that was stuff that I didn't realize until I actually did it. And that's another reason why I
Uh,
respect actors so much, is that not only do you have to memorize like where to be at an exact moment in time, but you almost have
yeah.
to transform yourself in some aspects and become somebody completely
Hmm.
different. But that to me just
Yeah.
seems like a really fun aspect, like challenging but also fun.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think that's what we all live to do, for sure. And when you said that you directed, and are you an actor as well?
I am not. No, I've taken some
Oh,
acting
yeah.
classes, but
Mm-hmm.
I've never acted in anything. I should say that.
Oh, got it, got it. Yeah, yeah. Well, you certainly learn a lot directing and from your actors too.
Well, and
You
that's
know.
that's something too, is that I feel like everyone should try all aspects of film. Like if someone's primarily an actor, they should try something that's behind the camera. Maybe not necessarily
Mm,
directing, but something behind the scenes,
yeah,
so that you realize what the other
yeah.
person has to do. Because I use this analogy so many times, I'm sure the listeners are probably tired of me using this analogy, but filmmaking is like one big machine, and
Hmm.
every role from actors to all the way down to PAs are all little cogs in the machine,
Hmm.
and they all have to turn and work together to make the machine run.
Oh my gosh, beautiful. Yeah, it's a total, really a collaborative experience. Absolutely. And everyone's got to do their job and do it well, you hope, you know.
Yeah,
And it's always a miracle when it all comes together. You go, oh my God.
but
Thank God.
I also think just doing it is the best way to learn, though, especially when it comes to film. Like you can take classes, and
Yeah.
I think classes are great. Like classes I did help teach me the basics with working camera, with lighting, all
Hmm.
that stuff. But actually being on a set and doing it is without a doubt to me the best way to learn.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. What an education. Definitely. Yeah. This is tremendous.
So, kind of transitioning into your short film "Wives of the Skies," what was it that after acting for as long as you have, what was it that
Yeah.
made you want to step behind the camera and do writing and directing?
Well, I didn't ever think I was going to be directing, I'll be honest. This is now the third thing that I've done. And my initial goal was always to write stuff for myself, of course. And I wrote several features, and I think I had pretty early on from the time I started writing scripts, I was successful in that I got they were optioned, or I got people interested. I wrote for directors. I've written a little for television. It was very fulfilling for me. It got to the point at one point where in order to, well, I had a film that looked like it was not a huge budget. It was over $3 million, and we were very close to getting it made. And basically, unfortunately, it didn't get made. It was a terrible story why it didn't get made. A typical Hollywood story, things getting screwed up. And I took the script and I just did a derivative short feature of that script, and I entered it in a festival, and I won funding to make it. Not this, not Wise of the Skies, but another one called Doc Got Shot. And I starred in it and co-directed it. And I thought, you know what? This is fun. And it was successful, did really well in the film festival circuit, etc. And I thought, this is great. And then I did it again as a second movie. That was a short doc, and it was qualified for Academy Award. And then this one came along. It was like, gosh, I wrote it several years ago, Wise of the Skies, and it was a finalist at Slam Dance, and I got somebody interested in funding me so I could make it. And really, so the reason I decided to, long answer, I'm sorry,
No, you're good.
to actually direct was in order to write and get my stuff produced. I thought, well, I'll just direct it. And it was easier that way. For whatever reason, it was easier for me to get money for my own project and direct it than it was to get money and get a director for hire. And also, I knew how I wanted it to be. So I really, really wanted to direct this third one more than the other two. This time I'm like, I'm not even going to be in it. I'm just going to direct it. So, so I guess it was in order to get it made, if you can believe that. And the person who ended up funding it, part of it was sometimes, it's hard to get money from people. This guy was like, look, I'll give you the money if you direct it. So I'm like, and because he also was an executive producer, his name is Tom Young, on my second film. So that said, that was part of me getting funding in order to do it, is that I would have to direct it, which was fine with me. I was thrilled to do it. I was a little nervous, of course, because this was a period piece, and I didn't know how that was all going to play out. But I was able to. It actually worked out a lot easier than I thought it would, in terms of trying to recreate 1965 wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. And I also had a great team around me, great cinematographer and a couple of good producers, great actors, and the script was really well done. And I have to say, it came out I was really excited by what I saw.
Well, I had the pleasure of watching it earlier today, and something that really jumped out at me immediately was that it captured that 60s type of feel to it. Like I don't want to give away like too much that happens in the movie, but the way it starts out with the small picture with like the kind of faded colors that remind you of the 60s, and then even I love the title card with the wide shot, and you see the title of the movie in that psychedelic type font and the little credits at the bottom. Like just little things like that really make me happy when I watch movies like that. It's like the little finer details that a lot of people won't think about. I love.
Yeah.
But it was.
Oh, me too.
But it was.
I appreciate that.
It was a really fun, movie to watch. Like I felt like it was.
Oh, thank you.
I felt like you captured the 60s element throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. It was super important given the material. And I have to say, I really was a stickler about it. Every single thing in that movie was more or less authentic. The pen, that he hands the girls to write their number down with, that's from the 60s, the radio, everything was done like properly. And a lot of the artwork was actual, like, incredible art from the 60s that we saw on the walls. And it was about 3 months prep on every level. And given that it's a 20-minute film basically, and it's, the budget wasn't huge. I ended up, it was a good learning experience for me because I had to do the costuming. I really had to do the production design. I had to do like everything, get all the dishes and every prop and everything to be just right, and there was some luck. I got some great sets, that I got to work on, but like the hotel, the Stewardess Hotel, that opening Stewardess Hotel was actually a theater in Hollywood that we transformed into a lobby. So, and I had a great production designer who jumped in there and we built that thing out, and we had to do it like all the morning of. We shot that whole lobby thing in a half a day, and the rest of the movie we shot in 2 days. So we had to work fast, and I had such a great team. I was really lucky to have them. Brian Keith Davis was production designer, and Davey Robertson was my DP and also the editor on the film. So,
well, and
yeah, it was fun.
that's very key too about especially a short film, because you normally only have a short amount of time to get things
Yeah.
done. So to have an important team is absolutely crucial.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's everything. And you have to surround yourself with really great people, but you have to also know it's your project and you're going to be doing a lot more than you might do if this was a bigger budget. Like if I had a budget, I might actually have somebody go shopping for me and get all the costumes and design them. Like I designed the costume, but I was able to hire somebody at a ridiculously reduced rate to make it for me and things like that. But if I had more money, would I actually be the one going out and finding all the props and the locations? No, someone else might do that. I might make the decision, but I had to do everything. So, which was fine. It was a great learning experience for me.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you liked that shot, with the Wise of the Skies, because we had a really that was a last minute shot, because eventually I really wanted it to be an elevator door closing and Wise of the Skies come on, like on the doors as it was closing, and using that as that last shot. But there was no elevator. And then we tried to create an elevator. And so my DP and I said, let's just do a long shot and then we'll do Wise of the Skies over those windows. And so, the things that you sometimes plan for, what you end up doing turns out to be like the better shot. And that was the shot I ended up using for the end of that opening act, first act. So
yeah, you never quite know how things are going to work out. Like you can plan all you want, and then sometimes you'll think of something on set, you do it, and it's way better than you had originally planned it out to be.
Oh yeah, and it was like one of those things that exactly we knew. I knew that because we were going to CGI this elevator, and I said, look, we need a safety. We knew that actually going into it when we looked at the space, and we both said that will be the shot. But it wasn't my intention to use that necessarily. My intention was to, again, hopefully do some kind of CGI to make an elevator. I actually wanted to build an elevator, like the doors. I thought, how hard can that be? But once I realized that my production designer was like, yeah, that's not going to happen, and he suggested the CGI, I was like, okay, I'm out. We'll shoot it, but I don't think we're going to use it. So yeah, coming up with that last shot was crucial.
And it all worked
and
out.
Lucky. Yes, it worked out better. And then I never went back to that. I never revisited the elevator thing that we tried to shoot, because I don't CGI. I don't trust that, even though it's a square basically box for an elevator. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't. We don't need to do that. This shot is so pretty.
Yeah,
it's so beautiful. And also, we created a sunshine in there. That little, the sunlight coming through. Of course, there was no sun coming through. So I got my sunshine through there. So I was like, woohoo, we did it. And once we turned it into like CinemaScope, it just really, wow, really looked like a movie after that.
No, the whole look of it was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, of course, we shot the Super 8 part, or it's actually 16 version through the camera, because the guy's making a documentary of these women, these stewardesses.
And he had a great name, by the way.
Oh, yeah, his name is Derek. He's such a good actor. His name is Drew Brandon Jones, and he was just tremendous. And all the actors were tremendous, really, really lucky.
Well, and that's the thing too about, with the short film, you work with a relatively small cast, so it's almost like you really get to work hands-on with every single actor. So that
yes and no, because timing is everything, right? So yes and no. Yeah, it's there weren't a lot of moving parts in that there were 4 actors, but I had one rehearsal with them for a couple hours to get through the whole script and do all the costuming on a different day. We did that. So, but that was it. Other than that, I got to talk to each one of them individually and work with them, but still it's film. You got to kind of keep it moving.
Yeah.
And also there's a big element in this movie of the kimbaku, and which for people who don't know what that is, it's art of the Medax Kimbaku. The literal translation is the beauty of tight binding, and that was a really hard thing to pull. I thought to pull off because in the movie, I mean, there's we display this Kinbaku, and how difficult is it to shoot that in a film, because you really have to be doing it. You have to be, those girls were really in it for several hours at a time. And that gave me a lot of anxiety.
But props to them though for doing it.
Oh my gosh, unbelievable, and making it look so easy. Yeah, I was lucky to have a master, a Kinbaku master. His name is Master K, and he wrote the book The Beauty of Kinbaku, which is a amazing book on shibari or Kinbaku. And he came on board. I got very lucky, and he let us have he demanded for us to work on this film. He had to have a rehearsals, of course, so that we knew what the design of the roping would be, how we were going to light it, basically, if these women were able to even sustain it, to be in it, because there has to be a certain amount of what's the word I'm looking for? Tension in the roping to hold the design. Because I was pretty ignorant. I'm like, can't you just rig it up and have her slip her arm through? And he's like, yeah, no, it doesn't work like that at all. And that gave me a lot of anxiety. I'm like, oh, how are we ever going to be able to do a film featuring Kinbaku if these women are tied up? I mean, this is insanity. And so I take incredible safety measures, and I was just fortunate to have these incredible pros working on it. Otherwise, there's no way I could have done it. No way. So I got lucky. There's that luck factor.
So I did want to ask you about that specifically, and also what was just the general inspiration for coming up with this story for you?
Wow, that's such a good question, because the story is just, I never really know exactly where the inspiration comes from, but there was the theme throughout the story that there were these good girls that were drawn bad, right? I mean, these girls were pure and kind and sweet, but they look like the opposite. They look sexy and just unfortunately in the world that we live in, my husband always says to me, "Oh, you're such a good girl drawn bad," because I like such a Girl Scout. I didn't drink, I don't smoke. I took care of my mom and my grandma, but I look kind of like a cycle slut from Mars. I just didn't look like what I really was. And throughout my career, I got treated in such a way in my life for what I looked like. And that is sort of what happens with these women. The idea of the stewardesses, yeah, I could tell you how that happened. I was working with somebody who sent me a link to these stewardess outfits, these vintage stewardess outfits that were on eBay and being bought and sold and bid on for these incredibly expensive, prices. And I'm looking at this. There were these vintage stewardess outfits from 1965. I'm like, why are they so expensive? And then I saw that they were all being bid and bought and sold by men. So I'm like, oh, there's like this fetish around these stewardess outfits. And that intrigued me. Like, what is this? It wasn't just that they were designer, which they were. Designers like Pucci and Yves Saint Laurent and Mary Wells designed these outfits during those days. But there was something else. There was something else going on with these outfits, that they were so collectible. And that intrigued me. So that kind of fetish quality to this story I guess that is what with the Kinbaku, which is a fetish, of course, somehow they melded together into this movie. And yeah, that was the inspiration.
Well, it's
Sounds
interesting,
very convoluted.
because it's almost like a point of symbolism throughout the movie. And I mean the bondage, because even when Derek and Kevin go over for dinner, even the chicken is bonded in the same way. So as like that surprised me. Like, you lay the chicken out, I'm like, huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, very funny. I mean, we have to, it's a comedy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, yes, I'll be honest, when I write something, I never like write anything exact. I never like hit the nail on the head with the hammer. I don't drive it home in an obvious way. There's always layers or nuances. And that is, this definitely, when it was all said and done, the way I see it is like, this is a comedy. Other people have written like essays about what they thought this movie was, which is fine because it intrigues people. One reviewer really loved it, but she described it as abject discomfort. I'm like, oh. She never once mentioned it was a comedy, but she gave it a great review. And I was like, wow, that is interesting. So there is like that. And I love movies that I love it when people have their take on it. And is the bondage for the way that they were treated in society? I mean, because as a stewardess, there were a lot of rules. You had to be a certain age, certain height, certain weight. You had to wear certain undergarments. And there was sort of, and at the time, women weren't even in the workforce really. So this was definitely, a loaded subject for people.
Well, and that's the beauty of movies is that it can mean movies can mean so many things to so many different people.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I could take a movie in a way completely different than you do. So that's kind of the exciting thing about it is that they mean so much, and that's why I think movies. And I give so much credit to people who can draw and paint incredible paintings, murals. But to me, movies, the art of filmmaking, to me is the greatest art form that there is, and I think that is my reason why I believe that.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, so much is imbued upon your pace by other people, and that's wonderful. That's the greatest part of it. It's exciting, and it's really. I love that. And a lot of people watching this movie, they're a lot smarter than I am, My mind doesn't analyze in the same way as some people do. And that's fine too. They take a different, almost meta position watching it. So I love that. I love that about this film in particular. And that it's been exciting for me with this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's been pretty cool.
Well, as we start to wrap up here, I did want to ask you what's next for you. Do you have any other writing, directing aspirations? Do you have any other? I mean, I know it's a little bit of a interesting situation because of what's going on in the world right now. But do you have anything in the works as far as sometime down in the future?
Yes. Well, and on the acting front, I don't know if it's going to happen at the end of April. There's a TV show called Nights of Swing that it's new, and they only made the pilot. Now they're starting the series, and it's about high school kids in 1947 who put together a swing band in high school. They elicit the help of their teacher, and they're successful. And it's really good kind of wonderful programming in terms of kind of a throwback. And so these people made the pilot, and now they're making the series, and I was cast as a recurring role on the series as the mother to one of the female vocalists in this swing band. So we'll see if it happens at the end of April. I have no idea what's going to happen. And as far as the writing goes, I do have several scripts, and we'll see. I'm hoping to get one particular one made sooner than later. And I'm also about 3/4 done with a novel that I've been writing. So,
oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. In fact, during this time of stay at home, I have no choice now, do I, but to finish my book. So that's what I'm going to do. It's kind of like, now you have to. It's like, oh, I don't want to. Oh, well, I guess I have to. So, but let's hope that we all get through this. And we get through this alive, we survive this time, not to sound so dramatic, but it does feel pretty dire and frightening for a lot of people. So I'm praying for the universe right now.
Yeah, same. Definitely same.
Yeah. I used to pray for other things, kind of like, oh, please let me get this audition. It's sort of funny now. I can't even think about things like, did I ever think like that? Now it's like, let us live through this. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I absolutely know what you mean. So, if you had one piece of advice to give to an aspiring filmmaker or actor, what would it be?
Mm. Well, there's so much to say, but I guess if I had one piece of advice is that you need to keep perspective about the whole thing. In that there's so much rejection, whether you're a filmmaker or an actor or a writer even, and it's just to keep the perspective about it and don't let the forces that seem like they're working against you, because this is a difficult industry, do not buy into it. You got to keep it going. You got to keep your head down and keep going, and don't be stopped by what people call rejection. So I think that's resilience is the word I'm looking for here. You have to be resilient and keep going, just keep going and enjoy what you're doing, and just feel like, look, I'm just enjoy where you're at as you're going through it, because very few people get to be so lucky as to just have it all break for them so quickly. You have to learn how to zig and zag within the journey of it all. For example, if you thought you just wanted to be an actor, maybe you might be a writer too. Just be open to the zigzag, if you will, because you've got to be flexible and resilient in this industry if you want to work in it.
Well, that's just good life advice in general, the zigzag, because that's what
Yeah.
life is.
Yeah. Yeah, right now it's really a big lesson for all of us on the universe right now, for sure. And it's like, I can't imagine what it must be to be even like 20 years old right now, and or 25 years old in the universe, and see this happen and go, wow. It must be like, will we get through it? Like, what's the point? And people must be doing this sort of existential two-step, going, why, what? And I think this is an opportunity for all of us right now. We have to look at it like this, and keep doing your art. So
Yep.
that's, yeah.
Nope. That's
Keep going.
that's very true. And last
Yeah.
question: do you have any
Mhm.
websites or social media you'd like to plug so the listeners can follow you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, my my Instagram is at Honey Lauren. I spell my name Lauren, Honey, Honey. And of course, Instagram and Facebook, I'm Honey Lauren. There's also a Facebook page for this film, Wives of the Skies. And there's also a website for myself, honeylauren.net. And there's wivesoftheskies.com. So we try to update things. I try to update Facebook as much as I can within the environment that it is now, though it's been a little more challenging because I have to be sensitive to what's going on in the world. But people can absolutely reach me at any one of these places. So, and I hope they do. I think I'm on Twitter also as at Honeygay, HoneyGay, at Honeygay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do the
Oh,
podcast. This was fantastic.
thank you, Derek. I really appreciate your time and wanting to talk about the industry with me. And I just really appreciate it. And I'll look forward to hopefully talking to you again. And I'll let you know when eventually we'll stream the movie. Right now we're trying to do festival, even though the festivals have been pretty much postponed in a foreseeable future. But eventually the life of the film, it gets online. So I'll get back to you when we know more about where we're going to put it on what platform.
Yeah, for sure. No, look forward to talking with you again.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you so kindly. Have a good day.